Hey friends, it's Laura with Laura B Floss Tube. Welcome or welcome back. I'm so glad you joined me today. This is the first video in our Dutch Chocolate Quilt Sew Along series. I am so excited to get this started. This is a quilt I'm going to be making for my stepdaughter. She's moving into a new home this fall, and so she needs a new quilt for her bed. I'm going to be using a quilt from Perfect 10 Quilts. This is published by It's So Emma with Fat Quarter Shop. You can get this quilt book on their site and then a few other places too, I'm sure. So just look for Perfect 10 Quilts if you don't already have it. The idea behind this book is to basically use pre-cuts and specifically to use layer cakes. It's why it's a Perfect 10, because layer cakes are 10-inch squares. But I am not going to be using a layer cake. I'm going to be using yardage. So I just want to give you some ideas on how to look at a pattern that is using pre-cuts and think about how much fabric is in a pre-cut and translate that into using yardage. So my stepdaughter decided she wanted to use basically 3 colors, 3 focus fabrics, and a background. So what I have done is in your book, you will find the Dutch Chocolate Quilt pattern. And it's super cute, super scrappy. They have a ton of different fabrics in this quilt and it's really gorgeous. But like I said, I'm going to be using yardage, and my stepdaughter decided to use basically 4 fabrics, 1 background, 3 focus. So when I looked at the pattern, which I can't give you the cutting instructions and things like that, so just know that. I will tell you the pattern calls for a layer cake of focus fabric and a background fabric plus yardage. So what I did was I did some math to figure out how much yardage I would need, and then I also thought about the size of the quilt, because the size of the quilt in the book is 65 by 84. I want it to be basically 84 square for her, so I'm going to be adding another 4 blocks. So I had to decide how much more fabric that was going to require and just how to get all of that to line up and even out for me. So when we look at layer cakes are 10-inch squares, and there's typically 40, 42 in a pack. So you basically have 3 yards and a little bit of fabric in each layer cake. So when you're looking at a layer cake and you're thinking, wow, this price is so expensive, you're getting 3 yards of fabric. So you kind of have to keep that in mind when you're using your layer cakes. Now, the pattern tells you to use 36 10-inch squares. And like I said, sometimes layer cakes come in 40 or 42, sometimes, I don't know, maybe sometimes they're 36. So whatever they are, just know that's how many 10-inch squares they're saying that you need. So when I took that number and did the math, I came up with 3 yards and a couple inches. So that is 3 yards total for the entire layer cake. I didn't want 3 yards of each focus fabric. So that meant I basically needed a yard of each focus fabric to get the size in the book that I needed. However, I'm adding another 1/3 onto that quilt, so I needed to add another 1/3 of yardage onto that. So I ended up getting 1.5 yards of each of my 3 focus fabrics. And then you start thinking about how much you need for the background. They're using a layer cake of the solid, and they're using yardage for the solid. So you take that layer cake, which again is around 3 yards, and then you add the yardage they're calling for, and you add all of that together. And I came up with 5 1/3 yard for the background on the pattern as they have it outlined in the book. But again, I'm going to be increasing it by another 1/3, so that means I need more fabric. So when I did all of that, I ended up saying I needed 1.5 yards each of my 3 focus fabrics. Let me bring you a little closer so you can see my chicken scratches. I ended up deciding that I needed 1.5 yards of each of my 3 focus fabrics plus 7.5 yards for my background fabric. And then I also needed another 7/8 of a yard for binding. And then my backing, depending on what I get, it depends if I go with 45-inch or a 108 wide solid. But that's kind of what I decided I needed. So I went to the store. I actually went with my stepdaughter, and she chose her fabrics. And I'll show those to you so you know what I'm using. Okay, so here are the fabrics we're using. I actually have a Bella Solid in flax color down here, and this is our background fabric for the quilt. And then we have our 3 focus fabrics. I have 1.5 yards of each of these. There's an Essentials Graphic 45 by Wilmington Prints, and it's this green color. It's really pretty. It's got some cute little X's in it. It's a really nice fabric. It feels really good, and it's going to be a really soft, subtle pattern for the quilt. We also have a little bit of Spice Bazaar by Laura Behringer, and this is the Star Anise. And this is where we actually got the flax color from these little flowers, and that green matches the other green in the Wilmington prints as well. And then lastly, we have the Samsara by Painted Sky Studio for Bernitex. And this has, again, a little bit of the yellow that picks up the yellow in our yellow fabric, that same green color, and then they have the little red flowers with a black background on this. So all of these working together are going to make our Dutch chocolate quilt for my stepdaughter, which is Miss Callie. I'm sure you'll hear me say her name, so might as well just get that out there and over with at the beginning. So these are our fabrics. So if you are wanting, now, like I said, I am making this quilt 84 square, not 64 by 84. If you are wanting to sew along with me, this is what you will need. You'll need 1.5 yards of 3 of the focus fabrics. You'll need 7.5 yards of the background, and the Perfect 10 Quilts book for the pattern. Now I am going to, the next video I will be showing on you how to cut your strips, because I'm going to be using the half square triangle rulers, which let me grab those too. All right, so in the next video, I'm going to be showing how to use the strip tube ruler for our half square triangles, because I'm not going to cut out a bunch of squares to sew them together to turn them into half square triangles. I'm going to be doing tube sets, because I know that of each of these 3 fabrics, I need the yellow and flax, the green and flax, the black and flax. Black and flax? It's almost like Frankenstein, or I don't know. Anyway, Anyway, I'll show how to do those tube sets, and using the strip tube ruler, how to get our half square triangles cut and together really quickly. Now you will lose a little bit of fabric when you're doing this, but you do with any half square triangle method, unless you're really precise with your sewing and you don't have any waste, in which point I'm just going to say kudos to you. I have not mastered that skill. Anyway, I do half square triangles, I lose a little bit of fabric, but this way is definitely the fastest and the most precise that I've found for those 2 combination of things, right? So I look forward to using the strip tube ruler with you for this quilt along. I am super excited about it. And then I'm going to be, putting the blocks together a few different ways. I think Callie has decided that she wants all of her blocks together the same, but I'm going to be sending her photos of which layout she likes the best. So that way I know which way to progress with my quilt top. So if you don't want to make an 84-inch square quilt, if you do only want to do the 64 by 84, then you will not need that much fabric. You will only need 1 yard of each of your 3 focus fabrics, or 3 yards total, however you want to break that up. You need 3 yards total of a focus fabric, and then you'll need about basically 5.5 yards of your background fabric. And that will also get your sashing and borders. It does not include your binding. The binding is another 7/8 of a yard is what the pattern is calling for. I haven't done the math on that to decide if that's actually necessary. I usually just get an extra yard for binding just because. So, but if you want to do the math, I mean, it's pretty easy. You do the 84 on 2 sides and 60 on the others. So I know I need 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yeah, you'll need like 8 strips. 8 at 2.5 inches is nowhere near a yard, or 7/8 of a yard. So 2.5 inches times 8, what is that? 15. So you need like half a yard for your binding. I'm not really sure how they did their binding that they came up with 7/8 of a yard, but anyway, that I would say half a yard for binding, but obviously get more if you want. So that is where we're at. This quilt along is starting. This is the first video. So just gather your supplies. If you want to use the strip tube ruler, you can find them on Amazon. You can also find them in a lot of quilt shops. There are different ways, there are different brands that have these. You're basically just looking for the half square triangle strip ruler. Now I do have another set. Let me grab those and show those to you as well. Okay, like I said, this one is by Cozy Quilt Designs, and it's called the strip tube ruler. I really do like it, and it has all the sizes, wholes and halves on it. So like if you're wanting to do like a 1.5 inch square, half square triangle, use that line. If you want to, use this one on down the line. And this is like the stitching line where on your tubes, and I'll explain that in the next video. But there's also New Leaf Stitches. They have their Clearly Perfect slotted trimmers, and it's a set of 2. They have trimmer A and trimmer B. Trimmer B is whole numbers. Trimmer A is half. So if you're doing 3.5 inch, and it's kind of nice because they have some of the shading in here. So that's your stitching line, that's your edge, and that's you put it on there and you cut, and you have your slots so you can cut off the little ears and stuff too. And so, but if you need a 3 inch, then you have to use the other one, and the same thing. It shows you where to put the stitching, shows you where to cut, all that good stuff. I have both sets. Why? Well, okay, so full disclosure, I had this one sitting on the edge of my table, and I bent over to get something, and I broke this corner off. So this is actually like taped on. And I think it's just because these slots are in the acrylic. So it just makes it a little weaker on these corners, and that's why this snapped off. So one, I broke this one, but I can still use it for the most part. Two, I like this one because it has both halves and holes on it. I also like this one because it goes up to a 9 inch half square triangle, where these only go up to 6, I believe is the biggest one that you can get on this. Yeah. Maybe not even 6. Yeah, 6. You can get 6 inches up on that one, but you can go all the way up to 9 on this one. And like I said, this is one ruler, and it's good for all of these different increments. It also has this line down the middle, which the other one does too. But this one has a line down the middle, so you can even do more things than just half square triangles with it. So either one of those will work, and I think that there's other ones on the market as well. Any kind of half square triangle or tube ruler that looks like a triangle, basically, that gets you half square triangles will work for this project. All right, and then obviously you need a sewing machine and thread, lots of patience and some time, and a rotary cutter and a new blade. Make sure you change your blade and get a new needle in your sewing machine as well. So until next time, I hope you are gathering your supplies, and I hope you'll join me in sewing the Dutch chocolate quilt. The next video for this series will release next week, and we'll be cutting our strips sets to start sewing those together and start making some of our half square triangles. So I'm gonna have like 16 blocks to make, and I will be showing you some tips and tricks on just getting those together more efficiently, and some organization tips along the way as well. So I hope you do join me. I hope you are excited about this quilt along. I know I am. I know Callie's very excited to get a new quilt for her bed. So it should be a lot of fun. Please leave me a comment down below and let me know if you're going to be sewing along. Let me know what your latest quilting projects are. How many quilts have you made for family and friends this year so far? I would love to hear from you. I hope you're finding some time to craft and create and find some joy in what you do. Until next time, happy stitching.